And good morning once again to Bloomberg Opinion Editorial Board Conversations. I'm your host, Robert George, and once again we plunge into the crypto question with our favorite guest and my favorite colleague on the Bloomberg Editorial Board, Mark Whitehouse. Mark, good morning.
Morning.
Right. So, so as many people do on Monday night. I'm watching Monday Night Football, and they have the ESPN2 now has this thing called the Manning Cast, where Peyton and Eli Manning call the game and interview friends of theirs. They were talking to Tom Brady uh, on Sunday. He passed for his 600th touchdown, and his receiver kind of tossed it into the crowd to a fan, which, that 600 is a big number. No other quarterback has quite made that. So uh, uh, Brady found himself having to bargain to get the football back from the fan. Now, the analysts were saying that football could be worth as much as 100,000 to the fan if he wanted to auction it off somewhere. So Brady started up a barter system where he gave the fan a couple of extra footballs and
Some jerseys.
but here's the big thing: he gave him a Bitcoin, and the Bitcoin by itself was worth $63,000. So that kind of brings us to this kind of a question here, because in our editorial this week, you said you drafted the board's position is that Bitcoin doesn't work as money, even though it's got a lot of other advantages in many ways. So is it is it somewhat money? Was it being used as money in this Brady transaction?
Well, yeah, I mean, now Bitcoin is not only worth 50 whatever thousand dollars or 60 whatever thousand dollars, it's worth a fraction of a football. Um, but but seriously, this illustrates the absurdities of crypto on many levels.
So is it fair to say, footballs can be deflated, but Bitcoin can inflate?
Nice. So so first, think about the guy selling the football. Was he like, oh yay, a Bitcoin? Or was he thinking, yay, I can sell that Bitcoin for X amount of dollars, for $60,000? I mean, this was a dollar transaction. People were talking about how many dollars the football was worth, not how many Bitcoin the football was worth. But now let's consider Brady. Amazing football player, no doubt. Also a member of the laser-eyed crowd, a Bitcoin enthusiast, a believer, the Bitcoin believers.
You said laser-eyed?
Laser-eyed crowd.
Laser-eyed crowd.
People who have their Twitter profiles with lasers instead of eyes.
Right.
Now, is he a believer because he believes in the original purpose of Bitcoin, which was to free people from their reliance on central authorities like banks and governments to create money and facilitate transactions? I don't think so. I think, like most believers, he thinks crypto will make him rich, or richer than he already is. And these believers tend to interact with Bitcoin through the same types of financial intermediaries, like specialized ATMs, exchanges, opaque state licensed trust companies that the technology was supposed to obliterate. And often these intermediaries extract more fees and meet much lower safety and soundness standards than traditional banks, all while extolling the revolutionary and inclusive nature of crypto. So it's like, in many cases, inclusive means equal opportunity to get ripped off. And so Brady is an investor in a crypto intermediary, an exchange called FTX. And I think that's where the Bitcoin came from. And instead of playing at the casino, he's got a piece of the house, which is why he paid in Bitcoin. It's a marketing ploy. And it works. Look, here we are. We just mentioned Bitcoin and FTX. And the message many people will get from this is not like there's something wrong with Bitcoin, but ooh, I want a piece of that. Simply by talking about it, we're all becoming pawns in this crypto game.
That's really I was not aware of that investment, but and it's interesting that you mentioned that because on that same Manning broadcast on Monday night, Peyton made a joke to Brady. So you get that football back, and then I guess you can. The next thing you'll do is turn it into an ETF. And Brady, dead serious, said, "Oh, we've already started doing that. We've got this." So
Non-fungible token, an NFT, right?
NFT,
Burn the
yeah.
football, take a video, or but think about this. I mean, we know that Bitcoin that the fan received from Brady. I mean, we know that you can look on the blockchain, you can see the whole history of that Bitcoin. So I don't know. Does that Bitcoin somehow become worth more than other Bitcoins? Is that even could that even be a thing? I don't know. The technology of this.
We may when we see BTC, we may find that the B stands for Brady instead of Bitcoin. But getting back, into the editorial, you kind of outlined, kind of listing where traditional money, fiat currency has drawbacks and kind of deficiencies, but you also kind of listed some of the deficiencies in crypto, but you suggested that a merging of the two could be a great benefit beyond the current system. Talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, well, there is a problem to be solved here, right? Money as we know it leaves a lot to be desired. Right? For most people, money is a bank deposit, and that requires interacting with banks, which do a lot of annoying things, like open fake accounts in your name, or reorder your transactions so that they can extract more overdraft fees, or seem to encounter distress every time there's a crisis and need to be bailed out. Also, international transactions or international transfers they can take days to wend their way through the patchwork of correspondent banks that exists right now, and it can be very expensive. And if you don't have a bank account, which millions of Americans don't, things are even worse. You have to deal with check cashers and money transmitters that charge you enormous fees in order to make use of this thing called money. I think the average fee for with people sending money to their relatives back home in countries back home is like 6%, something like that. You're losing $6 for every $100 you send. Yeah, that's crazy.
Right.
So it would be great if we could come up with this alternative system that would allow people to transact directly. And that's kind of what, one of the things Bitcoin was supposed to do. It could even make the whole financial system more stable. If we didn't rely on the banks for our payments, then it would be easier to let big banks fail. So why hasn't it succeeded in this? Well, first of all, Bitcoin and other pure cryptocurrencies are far too volatile to be useful as money, as a medium of exchange, other than for like speculation, illicit trade, and the occasional financing of activists in oppressive regimes, like in Russia or something like that. The computing power required to keep the Bitcoin blockchain going makes it very slow and expensive for smaller transactions, and is very bad for the environment. As we've heard, has a very big carbon footprint, same as like a medium-sized country. And it's very easy to lose the keys to your crypto. You have to identify yourself with your ownership with using a private alphanumeric key, and you have to keep that somewhere. And people have lost these. I mean, about a fifth of all Bitcoin is estimated to have been lost in this way. So instead, people entrust their keys to wallet apps and other platforms that often get hacked.
But you mentioned that under the current system, there's even though banks have been around obviously for centuries, and in the U.S. they've been backed by the federal government going back to the after the Great Depression. but you pointed this out. A large segment of the American public is kind of shut out of the banking system, and yet a certain kind of cryptocurrency is backing remittances between
Right.
between the U.S. and U.S. and El Salvador. So I guess the question that I have is, how is something that is so relatively simple as the current banking system shuts out poor, underprivileged communities, but something that is seemingly so modern and high tech as cryptocurrency allows remittances between individuals in the U.S. and El Salvador.
So let's start with the stable coins.
And
so what they are,
you wanted to I'm sorry, define
yeah.
stablecoins.
So what they're it's a cryptocurrency that ties its value to a fiat currency, and that's how it solves the volatility problem. It's like, they're saying this token is always going to be worth $1 or something like that, and this is an implicit recognition of one of the biggest flaws of pure cryptocurrency, its volatility. They can run on blockchain platforms that are more efficient than the Bitcoin blockchain. They may also have some downsides that we may yet discover, but that energy problem of the Bitcoin blockchain is maybe a solvable problem. Most importantly, though, they're digital bearer instruments, so they're really like cash in electronic form. There's no need for all the complex verification, settlement, and reconciliation of different ledgers that makes the current system so slow and expensive. So in principle, they could make international remittances really easy, fast, and cheap. And this is what the Facebook initiated Diem project, formerly called Libra, wants to do. But of course, then there's the issue of, can you trust Facebook? I mean, if Facebook can go down for a day, that's and you can't use Instagram or something like that for a while. That's one thing. If you can't use the monetary system for a while, that's another. Technology over the Bitcoin blockchain, and this seeks to address Bitcoin's throughput and energy issues by establishing these side channels through which multiple payments can be made, and with only the final balance recorded on the blockchain. And that's what this app called Strike has been using to do remittances between the U.S. and El Salvador. It essentially uses Bitcoin as a utility. The people don't come into contact with Bitcoin. The user's money enters as dollars in one country and emerges dollars in another, spending practically no time in volatile crypto. And it can do that because this Lightning network is so fast.
Right. So as we drawing to a close here, what can and should be done on the regulatory front to try and bring
Right.
this marriage?
So this might take a couple more minutes. Do we have a couple more minutes?
Oh, yeah, yes we do. Yes we do.
So, I mean,
the numbers. Our time is like crypto. It's a little bit volatile. We can expand.
So the biggest problem, the problem that regulators are focused on, is that these things could trigger runs, like classic bank runs. They're in a sense, they're kind of like the wildcat banks of the early 19th century in the U.S., where they're making promises to redeem the stable coin for $1, or that that balance you have in the app is actually $1, but we don't know what's backing that. I mean, in the case of Tether, the Bloomberg Business Week did a great story on Tether recently. It's the most popular stable coin, has about $70 billion outstanding, and they found a company that was just quilted out of red flags, as they put it. Nobody really knows where this money is being held. And this lack of clarity, or if it becomes a lack of funds, could one day spook holders, precipitating a crash as everybody tries to run for the exits at the same time to get their money while there's still some left. And that could be disastrous for people in many ways. So I mean, the solution to this is pretty straightforward. Regulators should require anything that claims to be $1 to be backed by high quality assets, preferably actual fiat currency, like deposits at the Federal Reserve or deposits in a bank that in turn keeps the money at the Federal Reserve, which is the entity that creates the money. And then a stable coin could really be worth $1. And the infrastructure that these stable coins run on, if their blockchains prove to be as resilient as the Bitcoin blockchain has proved to be over the years, they could become the rails on which digital currencies issued by governments could run.
Is anybody else or any? I mean, there's obviously news out. China is trying to shut down crypto and so forth. Are any other nations looking at a more effective regulatory regime? Anybody doing it?
The Treasury is the Treasury is supposed to be coming out with a report this week on that. The Bank of England has thought about the stablecoin question very deeply, and they're all broadly aligned on behind this idea of requiring them to be backed by something real. The question is exactly how they'll do it, whether you require Congress to get involved, legislators to get involved, whether the regulators have the authorities to do what they want, whether it's going to be the SEC doing it or the Fed, and they're trying to figure that out. And of course, they need to move quickly because there are already a lot of stable coins out there. There are other issues. These new blockchains could crash or get hacked. They could abet crime, but they're all, for the most part, addressable.
Well, that's great. Well, that sounds like
and they need to be addressed for these things to work. Otherwise, yeah. Otherwise, you get a crash. The whole idea gets undermined by catastrophe.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, that sounds like a great place to stop. Mark, once again, thank you for coming in and making the complicated crypto world explainable to people like me who only knows about this stuff because he watches football. Anyway, again, Mark, once again, thanks a lot. We'll definitely be talking about this again in the coming weeks. I'm Robert George. Once again, thank you for joining us for